Hello, this is Matthew Robert Payne. I'm the author of 55 self-published books, which cost me about $120,000 that the Lord supplied. I'm the writer of 850 Christian articles on eZine articles, EZINE articles.com, and I've got 2,500 videos on YouTube. This parable teaching will be one of 54 on a playlist on my homepage, and within 3 or 4 months, it'll be published as a book, and you can look that up. I encourage you to share my videos and read my books and support me in any way you can. This is going to be called the parable of the humble dinner guest. I think it's called the parable of the humbled guest, and I hope that you enjoy what I have to say. We're just going to have a look at the text, and I'm going to be made small, and we're going to read the text. So he told a parable to those who were invited when he noted how they chose the best place, saying to them, when you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down at the best places, lest one more honourable than you be invited by him, and he who invited you and him come and say to you, give place to this man. Then you begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, go up higher. Then you'll have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So I've got a question for you. Was Jesus talking about wedding feasts there? Was he? Is this what the parable about? Like Jesus, that's 4 verses in the Gospels. It's quite a bit of text. Did Jesus use 4 verses to talk about when you go to a wedding, have this protocol? Because I've been to a few weddings, and they're all named places. They all had name tags, and you just had to find your name tags. And the tables were allotted to families and friends and certain things. The people who plan the feast, plan the wedding feast, show you which table to do, and they put their friends and stuff, and they organise it. So I've never been to a function where you chose your seats. So if this is about that, well, then this doesn't apply to me. Okay, so it's got to be more than that, and we can find verse 11 says, "For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted." Now, I can tell you some things about church visits. I like a church where you can go up and sit in the front aisle and have the church service and be right near the stage and the worship and be right in the presence and the altar of God. I love that. I love a church where I can walk into the church and sit on the front seats. But do you know what? Sometimes the pastors and their wives and their friends sit in those front seats. But I like to sit there, and I went to a church where I was always allowed to be there, and the pastor was there, and his wife was there, and I loved it. But I know a certain mega church in Sydney where I can't sit on the front seat because I went into that church early, and for the first 5 rows of seats, there were bags and things. Like you line up to get into the church, and when you get in there, you find out 5 rows of seats already have people's possessions in them, and you're thinking, well, who are these people that got in here and put their bags and stuff and jackets and stuff on the seats and reserved the seats. This doesn't work. I got here really early. So certain important people get front seats in mega churches, but in this homeless church that I used to go to, I used to get the front seat. And so that's sitting up the front in a church. I remember I was in India on a mission trip, and we were visiting this apostle there that had 450 churches in the state of Tamil Nadu, which Chennai is the capital. And we're in Chennai, and he had a pastors' conference with his 400 pastors came to hear the apostle that we went there with preaching for this day. And when we went out for lunch, there was all palm leaves and a special banquet. It was a big feast for the pastors, but also for us 20 people from Australia who'd come. And I was just filing through to take a seat with my mum and dad, and we're just going to take an empty seat, and I'm filing through. And the chief apostle of that network, like who ran the 450 churches and the Bible college, he said, "Matthew, come up here." And he sat me next to himself. And when I sat down, I remembered this parable because I was exalted. Now, I sat on his right, and the person who sat on his left was the guest speaker, the apostle that brought. Now, everyone looked up to the apostle who ran the churches, but the second most important person in the room was the apostle that just did the conference and spoke at the pastors' conference. So everyone in the room was impressed with the apostle who ran the show, but also impressed with the guy that had taught them all day in the 2 or 3 sermons. But sitting next to both of them was this overweight Australian guy, white guy, and everyone else is brown, except the 10 of our guests. And this is the guy that all the children love. And he's sitting there, so he must be special too. And I recognised for the first time in my life me being exalted by someone really important. This guy who ran these 450 churches, every day on his birthday, Jesus comes and meets him in the flesh, in a different body, a different looking body, and it's up to him to work out who's Jesus. And Jesus spends, an hour or two with him, just ministering to him in the flesh and catching up with him. So this is a pretty awesome apostle. And so I have been to a feast, and it wasn't a wedding, and I was exalted. So that means, I'm a humble sort of guy. Well, so there are a couple of stories for you. But I feel this parable is talking about stop putting yourself first. Stop thinking you're important. Stop big noting yourself. Stop trying to take the important seats. Stop trying to take the important positions. Stop trying to push yourself forward. Stop thinking you're better than you are. And just be humble. You don't need to sit up in the front seats in your church. You can sit halfway down. I think the rebels sit up the back, but you can sit up the back and talk to some rebels. If you go to a conference and they've got tables that you can just sit and have your meal, don't go up to the front tables near the stage. Take a lower table. The people who are further back are more humble. And, the rejects are always at the back. When you go to a footy match, when you go to a sporting match, the best tickets are up the front. The most keen people get up the front. So up the front's the best. Up the back's for the rebels and the people throwing popcorn and hot dogs at people. Um, so, so this is the lesson by Jesus. It's not just going to weddings, because, as I say, there's always been allotted seating at weddings that I've been to, and I haven't been to a lot in my life, but there are allotted seating. But it's good work in church, but any public place, Jesus wants us to be humble. And it's hard to be humble when you get good at something. Sometimes you become so good at something that you boast in how good you are, and that's pride coming out. And so Jesus reminds us in verse 11, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So if you don't humble yourself, God's going to embarrass you and humble you, because life is too important to Jesus to have you walking around in pride. So, yeah, it says in the Bible, humble yourself before the mighty hand of the Lord God, and in due time he'll lift you up. I think that's 1 Peter 5:7. Um, I was never very good at humbling myself, so God crushed me for 4 years. And I continued to go through crushings. And so, so it's hard to be humble. It's hard to humble yourself, and it's hard to catch yourself um, uh, and stop yourself from being prideful. Even today, I posted a post out of hurt, but I was being a bit prideful and sort of rebuking a person where, I had the inspiration to take the post down, and I didn't take it down. And the response the guy said was sort of argumentative, and I know that I should have taken it down. It's my pride that stopped me from taking it down, and I didn't listen to the Holy Spirit. So, um, getting rid of pride is like getting rid of a stain on a car going through a car wash. Like, in between car washes, your car's going to get dirty again. Pride is always going to try and rear its ugly head in your life, and you've got to be vigilant to keep pride away. I hope that you learn something with this. Hope that it applies to more than public meetings, and I hope that you know that Jesus wasn't just talking about wedding feasts here. He wouldn't have wasted 4 verses in the Gospels just over protocol for weddings. I think I've only been to 5 weddings in my life or something. So that's a bit of wasted gospel for me. I know that's probably why it got me thinking more than that. If you like my post, like it. If you didn't like it, don't like it. If you want to comment, please comment. I'd love that. I love comments. If you want to share this with your friends, share it with your friends. Just say this funny fat guy had this to say. I thought it was cracker. Um, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, please do. Just remember that this video is part of 54 videos that are going to be on a playlist on my YouTube homepage. And it's not on my homepage. If you just click on playlist, you'll find the Parables of Jesus Made Simple 2020 playlist, and look for that, and you'll be right. God